The Incredibles is without a doubt one of my favourite Pixar movies. It is a Pixar classic and an animation masterpiece. With its amazing storytelling, characters that have so much depth to them, along with its setting and beautiful animation style, it really does make for an incredible film, no pun intended. The film was definitely ahead of its time. Now, superhero films are really common with the likes of the MCU. Superhero films are now coming out every year. But when The Incredibles was released back in 2004, this genre was not as common as it is today. But The Incredibles isn't just a superhero film. The film is actually just about a family that happens to have superpowers. They go through all the struggles that a regular family would go through, but when you add the element of superpowers to the mix, it really makes for a great story. And 14 years later, we finally got the sequel, Incredibles 2. The film had a lot going for it, and it delivered on so many levels, making it nearly as good as the original, although the two are just as good as each other, and it's really hard to pick which one's better. But what about a third installment to the franchise? Most superhero franchises normally have three movies making up the trilogy of films, and Incredibles 2 did leave room open for a possible sequel. Pixar have not yet released another installment, but considering how well Incredibles 2 went, it will probably happen. So for today, I'm going to be pitching the idea for Incredibles 3. Now, it's really hard to write a pitch for this film because I feel like the third installment to a superhero franchise is always the letdown, so I've been putting this video aside for a while until I thought the story was actually good enough, and I tried to keep in similar elements from the previous two films and try to tie them all together. So with that out of the way, let's get into the story. The film starts off with a flashback to the golden era of the superheroes around the year 1945. We see Mr. Incredible, Frozone, Elastigirl, and a few other supers fighting a villain called Blazer. Blazer is setting the streets on fire and causing havoc in the city. The supers team up and take on Blazer. A massive epic battle takes out in the middle of the street between the supers and Blazer, and it ends with Mr. Incredible grabbing Blazer by the waist and throwing him into the explosion, killing Blazer instantly. The supers are congratulated in the streets by the police and the general public, and we see someone in their living room who is watching the supers being congratulated on TV scrunch up their fist and throw the remote into the TV. They walk away, and on the wall we can see photos of every superhero, and the person throws a dart onto the face of Mr. Incredible. The screen goes black, and the iconic Incredibles logo comes up onto the screen, reading Incredibles 3. We cut to the next scene, which is 18 years later. It only takes place 1 year after Incredibles 2. Bob and Helen, aka Mr. and Mrs. Incredible, are doing their everyday job fighting crime and being superheroes. Ever since the law was lifted to make supers legal again, they can now do their job that they love, but they also have to run a family. After they have just stopped the robbery, we see them quickly jump into the Incredibile, and they transform back into their normal selves, along with the car that transforms back into a normal car. They pick up the kids from school and Jack from daycare. Bob and Helen have to make sure that they can find the balance between being superheroes and parents. This is what they have a conversation about at home. The kids are also going through their own problems and having their own storyline going on, about hiding their true identity. Bob heads out on his night duty of being a superhero and comes across something very odd. Several superheroes are evacuating everyone through the streets and running through the streets getting everyone out of the buildings. Mr. Incredible goes to help get everyone else out of the area, and he gets the last people out, and suddenly there is a massive explosion in the street, and Mr. Incredible is set back by the explosion. He looks around, but the several superheroes that were helping are gone. He tries to make his way through the rubble and the flames, but it's no use. They are gone. But a strange figure in the shadows watches Mr. Incredible. A service is held for the supers, and there Bob, Helen, and Lucius are talking about the explosion and how it seems suspicious. That night they check out the street where the explosion had taken place. They are wandering through the site, and Helen spots a red light coming from a massive crack in the road. Bob rips through the road, and they squeeze into an underground hideout. They look around inside, and Bob comes across something quite strange. There are a bunch of weapons, and there are only two familiar. These weapons are from Syndrome. On the wall there are photos of all the supers, and in the middle there is the photo of Mr. Incredible with the dart going through his face. The explosion had been no accident. That attack was set up to kill him and the other supers. What was this person doing with Syndrome's tech? All of the assets had been frozen once Syndrome had been defeated. There was one thing that was clear though. The Incredibles were at high risk, and Mr. Incredible was a target. During the second act of the film, Bob and Helen are trying to uncover who is targeting them, but it turns out that Mr. Incredible isn't the only one who is at risk. Attacks are happening all over the world to different supers, and a main part of the movie is them trying to uncover what is happening and trying to figure out who is behind these attacks. In the meantime, the kids also have their own storyline going on that will tie into the main plot later on. As I said, the kids are having trouble hiding their powers and having to hide their true selves. And they're starting to feel overshadowed by their parents and don't just want to be known as the kids of famous supers. So this will include a trip to Edna's, who designs their own new personal supersuits. One night, Bob and Helen head out to investigate what is happening. They hear screaming coming from a nearby building and check out to see what's wrong. It leads them into a room where it appears to be a normal room, but when they turn the lights on, they come to see something quite disturbing. The supers that have appeared to have died in the attacks were all there, still alive but unconscious in their own glass tubes filled with water. The two turn around and see a man in a dark supersuit. Bob and Helen go to attack the man, but he pushes them back with only using one hand. Bob and Helen hit the outside of one of the glass tubes, and the man lets out a strange, cold laugh and says, "Mr. Incredible, you have no idea how long I've wanted to meet you." We find out that the man is actually the son of Blazer. The man goes by the name Shocker, and he wants to take revenge on Mr. Incredible for killing his father. Shocker was actually working with Syndrome many years ago, and they teamed up to take down the supers. Although when Syndrome died and the supers were made illegal again, he still wanted to take revenge. But then he figured, why go to the trouble of only killing one super when he can take down all of them? He set up a team around the world to set up all of these multiple attacks so he could capture the supers and use some of Syndrome's undeveloped technology to take over the supers and take their powers for himself. Shocker had the power set for at least 50 supers, while the supers who had their powers taken remained half dead and weak in their tanks. Shocker shocks Mr. and Mrs. Incredible so they can't move. Mr. Incredible stares up in shock and confusion and says, "How could have you got the rest of Syndrome's technology and the location of the supers? The only one who had access to all of that information is..." Suddenly, an only too familiar face walks from behind the corner. Rick Dicker. He stares down at Bob and Helen. "I'm sorry, Bob. It's just the way things have to be." He shines down a light at Bob and Helen, and it cuts to black. We now enter the third act of the film, and the twist at the end of Act 2 immediately raises the stakes. Shocker comes to the Parr's house disguised as Helen and then transforms back into himself, and as he's about to capture the kids, they manage to get away just in time, but not before Shocker destroys their whole house, because he's still getting used to all of these powers that he has stolen from other supers. Violet and Dash get to Edna's house where Frozen is there having a catch-up with Edna, while Jack plays in the corner. They tell Edna and Frozone about what has happened, and Edna gets the kids' new supersuits that have just been finished. Frozen and the kids take one of Edna's trackers that tracks Bob and Helen's suits. They arrive in the lab where the supers are being held, and Bob and Helen are taken out of their tubes. The two are dazed and weak after their powers have been taken from them. Frozone tells them that the supers just got a message to meet everyone at Green Central to discuss the attacks. However, this is just a trap, and all Shocker wants to do is get everyone's superpowers, so there is now no hope. They get to the location where the supers are meeting up, but it's too late to warn them. He has already started to suck everyone's superpowers out of them. The kids are able to cause a distraction while Frozone swoops in and steals the Sonic Blaster from Shocker, and Mr. and Mrs. Incredible are able to get their powers back. Shocker gives out a cold laugh. "You know, it's all fun and games, isn't it, to you, Mr. Incredible? It was so much better when you didn't exist, and with this, now that can be the case." Shocker thinks that the world will be a better place when only one person is in control instead of many. A massive battle breaks out in Green Central, Super's fighting Shocker, who is nearly unbeatable with his impressive power set. Shocker gets the hand on the Sonic Blaster back and sucks Frozone's power out of him, although for some reason it's almost like Frozone didn't actually mind giving his power over. Mr. Incredible grabs onto Shocker and the two were sent flying into the sky. Shocker was just about to finish off Mr. Incredible for good when Shocker started to freeze. He had too many power sets, and that is too much for the human body to take. He started to spaz out of control, with every superpower being pushed out of him, and that left Shocker with nothing. With one last shock, he was gone. Everyone recovered from the event and got back their superpowers, and the Parr family were just fine. We then flash forward 10 years later. The kids are now older and they have developed their own super names. The film ends with the Incredibles fighting crime as a family, and it wraps up everyone's stories and the Incredibles trilogy. And there you go, Incredibles 3. I know it's not perfect, and it's by no means flawless, but if they decided to make a sequel, that's probably my take on it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down below other Pixar movies you would like to see sequel pictures for. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a big thumbs up, and I'll see you next Friday.